The stars looked cold and distant through the observation window of the spaceship. Horizon's edge. Lieutenant Emily Park stood alone, her hands pressed against the thick glass, watching the gray moon below. In a few hours, she would have to go down there. In a few hours, everything would change. The Galactic Confederation had rules that were older than human civilization. When two species could not agree, when words failed and diplomacy broke down, there was only one way to settle things. They called it the trial of supremacy. Each side would release their most dangerous creature into an arena. The creature that survived would win the trial for its species. It was simple. It was brutal. It was the law of the galaxy. Emily had not slept in 2 days. The weight of what was coming pressed down on her like a heavy stone on her chest. Humanity had only joined the Confederation 5 years ago. They were still new, still learning, still trying to prove themselves among species that had traveled between stars for thousands of years. And now, because of a mining dispute over some rocks in the Kepler belt, everything they had built was at risk. The door behind her slid open with a soft hiss. Captain David Kim walked in, his boots making no sound on the metal floor. He was tall, with tired eyes and a datapad clutched in his hand like a weapon. Emily did not turn around. The Vectory ambassador sent another message, David said. His voice was flat, like he was trying very hard not to show emotion. They want to know if we are ready to surrender. Emily finally turned. What do they have? David looked down at his datapad, and Emily saw something she rarely saw in his eyes. Fear. They call it a Ravager. It is a creature they designed in their laboratories. 6 tons of muscle and armor. It has a shell harder than steel, claws that can cut through ship hulls, and glands that spray poison. 1 drop of its venom can kill a human in 30 seconds. Emily listened without expression. Inside, her heart was beating fast, but she had learned long ago to keep her face calm. Leaders could not show fear. Not when their crew was watching. Not when their entire species was counting on them. What are our options? She asked. David shook his head slowly. That is the problem, Emily. Command back on Earth did not think this would happen. They thought this was just a routine negotiation. We have no apex creatures on board. No weapons platform. No combat animals. Nothing. The silence that followed was heavy and cold. Through the window, Emily could see shuttles moving between the Vectory warships. They were preparing. They were confident. They had every reason to be. The Vectory were an insect-like species, tall and angular, with hard shells and clicking mandibles. Their ambassador, a creature called Threx Prime, had made the stakes very clear in their last meeting. If humanity lost the trial of supremacy, they would lose their mining rights to the entire Kepler belt. They would be pushed back to their home solar system. Worse than man, they would be labeled as a weak species, unworthy of respect, easy targets for any aggressive civilization that wanted to take what they had. Emily thought about Earth. She thought about the billions of people going about their lives, having breakfast, going to work, playing with their children. They had no idea that their future was being decided on a dead moon in a distant star system. They had no idea that everything depended on what happened in the next few hours. There has to be something, Emily said quietly. There is always something. David put down his datapad. Emily, I have checked every storage bay, every cargo hold, every emergency kit. We have medical supplies, food rations, and engineering equipment. We do not have monsters. Emily closed her eyes. Her mind was racing, going through every possibility, every memory, every resource they might have forgotten. And then, like a light switching on in a dark room, she remembered. Her eyes opened. We have one option. David frowned. What are you talking about? Emily was already walking toward the lift. Her steps were quick and purposeful. Tell the Vectory we accept their challenge. Emily! David ran after her, grabbing her arm. What option? What are you not telling me? She stopped and looked at him. There was something new in her eyes now. Not fear, not desperation. It was something like hope, mixed with something that might have been madness. Do you remember what I brought on board 18 months ago? She asked. The thing I was not supposed to bring? The thing the whole crew has been hiding from the inspectors. David's face went pale. Emily, you cannot be serious. I am very serious. That is a pet. That is a dog. The Vectory have a 6-ton killing machine designed in a laboratory, and you want to send in your dog? Emily pulled her arm free. He is not just a dog, David. He is a survivor. He is a fighter. And he is the only chance we have. She stepped into the lift, and the doors began to close. David stood frozen, his mouth open, unable to find words. Tell the Vectory we accept, Emily repeated. And tell them that humanity always fights. The doors closed, and the lift carried her down into the depths of the ship. Down to the cargo bay. Down to where a brindle-coated pit bull named Max was waiting, not knowing that he was about to become the most important dog in the history of the human species. Above, in the observation deck, David Kim stood alone. He looked out at the gray moon, at the Vectory ships, at the cold stars that seemed to be watching and waiting. Then, slowly, he reached for the communication console. This is Captain David Kim of the Earth vessel Horizon's Edge, he said, his voice steady despite everything. Please inform Ambassador Threx Prime that humanity accepts the trial of supremacy. We will meet them in the arena. He paused, and then added something that was not in any diplomatic protocol. And tell them not to underestimate us. They have no idea what they are about to face. The message was sent. The challenge was accepted. And somewhere in the cargo bay below, a dog's tail began to wag as familiar footsteps approached his kennel. The trial of supremacy would begin at dawn. The cargo bay was dark and quiet. Emergency lights glowed red along the walls, casting strange shadows between the stacked crates and equipment containers. Emily walked through the narrow pathways, her footsteps echoing in the silence. She knew this part of the ship better than anyone. She had walked this path hundreds of times over the past 18 months, always in secret. Always when the official inspectors were not looking. In the far corner, behind a wall of supply crates, someone had built a small space. There were blankets on the floor, a water bowl, and a few chewed-up toys that had seen better days. It was against at least 17 different regulations to keep an animal on a military vessel. Emily had broken every single one of them. She knelt down, and a massive head emerged from the shadows. Max was not a beautiful dog by any standard measure. He was 140 pounds of muscle, with a brindle coat that was more scar tissue than fur in some places. His ears had been torn in old fights, and one of his eyes had a permanent squint from an injury that had never healed properly. But when he saw Emily, his whole body came alive. His tail wagged so hard that his entire back half swung from side to side. And he pushed his big head into her hands like she was the most wonderful thing in the universe. "Hey!" "Max," Emily whispered, scratching behind his damaged ears. "I missed you too, boy." Max had come into her life 3 years before she joined the space program. She had found him on the streets of Austin, Texas, starving and covered in wounds from fights he had been forced into by cruel people. The shelter had told her he was too aggressive, too damaged, too dangerous to adopt. They had scheduled him to be put down the next morning. Emily had taken him home that same night. It had not been easy. Max had nightmares. He flinched at loud sounds. He did not trust anyone except Emily, and even with her, it had taken months before he stopped sleeping with one eye open. But slowly, day by day, he had learned that not all humans were cruel. He had learned that sometimes people could be kind, and he had learned to love Emily with a devotion that was absolute and unbreakable. The sound of footsteps made Max's ears go flat. A low growl started in his chest. Emily put a calming hand on his neck. "It is okay, boy. It is just David." Captain David Kim appeared at the entrance to the makeshift kennel. His face was pale, and he was breathing hard like he had been running. He looked at Max, then at Emily, then back at Max. "Emily," he said slowly, "please tell me you have a better plan. I do not. That thing the Vecturi have is a monster. It was designed in a laboratory by scientists who have been breeding killing machines for 10,000 years. It has armor that can stop bullets. It has poison that can kill in seconds." David pointed at Max. "And you want to send in a dog?" Max growled at David's pointing finger. Emily scratched his neck until he calmed down. "Sit down, David," she said quietly. "Let me tell you something." David hesitated, then lowered himself onto a nearby crate. Max watched him with suspicious eyes, but did not growl again. "Humans are not the strongest species on Earth," Emily began. "We are not the fastest. We do not have claws or fangs or armor. If you dropped a naked human into the wilderness 40,000 years ago, most predators would see an easy meal." "I know our history," David said impatiently. "Then you know what changed everything." Emily looked down at Max. "Wolves. Somewhere, a long time ago, wolves started following human camps. They ate our scraps. They warned us when danger was coming. And slowly, over thousands of years, we changed each other. Wolves became dogs, and humans became something more than just another animal trying to survive." She ran her hand along Max's broad back. "Dogs did not just live with us, David. They hunted with us. They guarded our children while we slept. They went to war beside us. They died for us. And in return, we gave them something no other animal has ever received from humans. We gave them our love." David was silent. He had never heard Emily talk like this before. "The Vecturi think in terms of raw power," Emily continued. "They designed their creature to be the perfect killer. Bigger, stronger, faster, more poisonous. They think that is what wins fights." She shook her head. "They are wrong. What wins fights then?" Emily looked up, and her eyes were fierce. "Heart, loyalty, the willingness to die for someone you love. That is what wins fights. That is what conquered Earth. Not strength, not speed, not weapons. Partnership." She stood up and pulled something from a storage locker nearby. It was a harness she had modified herself over the past year, made from lightweight armor plates designed for human soldiers. She had spent countless hours adjusting it, fitting it, making sure it would protect Max without slowing him down. As she strapped the harness onto Max, David watched in silence. The dog stood perfectly still, letting Emily work, trusting her completely. "Max survived 3 years on the streets," Emily said as she tightened the last strap. "He was in fights where bigger dogs tried to kill him. He won, not because he was the biggest or the strongest, but because he never gave up. Because he has something that cannot be designed in a laboratory." "What is that?" Emily finished with the harness and knelt in front of Max. She took his big head in her hands and looked into his eyes. He looked back at her with complete trust, complete love, complete devotion. "He has 40,000 years of evolution telling him one thing," Emily said softly. "Protect your human. No matter what. No matter the cost. Protect your human." Max's tail wagged. He did not understand the words, but he understood the tone. He understood that Emily needed him. And that was enough. David stood up slowly. His face was still worried, but something else was there now. Something like hope. "You really think he can do this?" Emily clipped a leash onto Max's harness and stood. "I think he will die trying. And sometimes, David, that is all that matters." the willingness to die trying. She walked toward the cargo bay exit, Max padding along beside her. At the door, she stopped and looked back. "Tell the crew to watch the broadcast," she said. "Whatever happens down there, I want them to see what a dog will do for the person he loves. I want them to remember." Then she was gone, walking toward the shuttle bay with her unlikely champion at her side. David stood alone in the cargo bay for a long moment. Then he reached for his communicator. "All hands," he said, his voice rough. "Report to the main viewing deck. You are going to want to see this." The drop pod shook violently as it fell through the thin atmosphere of the moon. Emily sat strapped into her seat, one hand gripping the safety harness, the other resting on Max's broad back. The dog pressed against her leg, his body tense but not afraid. He did not understand where they were going or why, but Emily was with him, and that was all that mattered. Through the small window, Emily could see the gray surface of the moon rushing up to meet them. The arena was a 5-kilometer stretch of rocky terrain, chosen specifically because it offered no advantage to either side. There were crevasses and boulders, patches of strange alien plants, and nothing else. No shelter, no escape. Only open ground where two creatures would fight until one of them stopped moving. The pod hit the ground with a bone-jarring impact. Warning lights flashed, then went dark. The door hissed open, and cold air rushed in. Emily unstrapped herself and stepped out onto the alien surface. Max followed immediately, his nose already working, pulling in thousands of new scents that his brain struggled to understand. His ears swiveled in all directions, catching sounds that human ears could not hear. The sky above was a dull orange color, and 2 small suns hung near the horizon. Hovering drones circled the arena, their cameras broadcasting everything to 17 different star systems. Billions of beings across the galaxy were watching. Humans, Vecthory, species that Emily had never even heard of. All of them waiting to see what would happen. Emily looked across the arena. On the far side, maybe 2 kilometers away, she could see the Vecthory observation platform. Ambassador Threx Prime stood at the front, his insect-like body gleaming in the sunlight. Around him, other Vecthory clicked and buzzed in their strange language. They were confident. They were excited. They thought they already knew how this would end. A massive gate began to open beneath their platform. Emily felt her heart stop. The Ravager emerged slowly, like a nightmare crawling out of the darkness. It was bigger than the reports had said. Much bigger. Its body was low to the ground, supported by 6 powerful legs that ended in claws the size of swords. Its head was mostly jaw, filled with teeth that overlapped and interlocked like a terrible machine designed only for tearing flesh. And its eyes, dozens of them scattered across its face, burned with a red light that spoke of hunger and rage. The creature's carapace was black and red, thick as armor plating, covering every part of its body except the joints where its legs met its torso. Venom dripped from its mandibles, hitting the ground and hissing as it burned through the rock. Max went completely still beside Emily. The hair along his spine stood up, and a low growl began building in his chest. He did not know what that thing was. His brain had no category for it, no instinct that told him how to fight it. But every part of him knew one thing with absolute certainty. That creature was dangerous. That creature was death. Emily knelt beside him, her hand on his neck. She could feel his muscles trembling, not with fear, but with readiness. He was waiting. He was preparing. 40,000 years of evolution had shaped him for moments like this. The galactic broadcast commentators were already speaking, their voices translated into 100 languages. The human is brought a small quadruped mammal. Preliminary scans show it weighs approximately 60 kilograms. The Ravager weighs 6,000 kilograms. This appears to be a significant mismatch. Perhaps the humans have misunderstood the rules of the trial. Perhaps they believe this is a joke. Whatever their reasoning, this will likely be brief. Threx Prime's voice echoed across the arena, amplified by speakers embedded in the observation platforms. Lieutenant Emily Park, you insult us with this creature. We expected warriors. We expected a fight worthy of the trial of supremacy. Instead, you bring us a pet. Emily stood up slowly. She looked across the arena at the ambassador, at the Ravager, at the cameras that were broadcasting her image to billions of viewers. You want a warrior? She called back, her voice steady and clear. You are looking at one. She put her hand on Max's head. He leaned into her touch, his eyes never leaving the Ravager. This creature is called a dog. His ancestors were wolves, predators that hunted in packs across the frozen lands of Earth. Thousands of years ago, they made a choice. They chose to stand beside humans. They chose to fight with us, to hunt with us, to protect our families while we slept. The Ravager was moving now, pacing back and forth behind an invisible line that marked the official boundary. It was eager. It was hungry. The Vectory handlers were struggling to hold it back until the trial officially began. Emily continued, her voice rising. His kind have charged into burning buildings to save children they had never met. They have thrown themselves at armed attackers to protect their families. They have walked across continents to find their way home. They have died again and again throughout human history because they loved us. She unclipped Max's leash. He is not just a pet, ambassador. He's my partner. He is my family. And you have no idea what you have just unleashed. A horn sounded across the arena. The trial had officially begun. The Ravager screamed, a sound like metal being torn apart, and charged forward. The ground shook with each step. Dust and rocks flew into the air. 6 tons of engineered death was coming straight at them, moving faster than anything that Psi should be able to move. Max did not run. He did not hide. He looked up at Emily one last time, his tail giving a single wag. Then he turned toward the charging monster, and he ran to meet it. Emily watched him go, her heart breaking and swelling with pride at the same time. Tears were already forming in her eyes. Go get him, Max, she whispered. Show them what a good boy can do. The 2 creatures met in the center of the arena, and the fight for humanity's future began. The Ravager was fast. Faster than anything Max had ever faced. It covered the distance between them in seconds, its massive body moving with terrible grace. Its claws tore furrows in the rocky ground. Its many eyes locked onto Max like targeting systems. Its jaws opened wide, revealing rows of teeth and the glands that would spray deadly poison. Max did not run straight at it. Something deep in his blood, something older than memory, told him that would be death. Instead, he moved in a weaving pattern, darting left, then left again. His paws found purchase on the alien ground, like he had been running on it all his life. His eyes never left the monster in front of him. The Ravager's first strike came like lightning. One massive claw swept through the air, where Max had been a heartbeat before. The wind from the blow ruffled his fur. If it had connected, it would have cut him in half. But Max was not there anymore. He had rolled to the side, found his feet, and was already circling. He was not trying to win. Not yet. He was doing something the dogs had done for thousands of years alongside human hunters. He was learning his prey. Emily watched from her position near the drop pod, her hands clenched into fists. Every instinct told her to run out there, to help, to do something. But the rules of the trial were clear. Once the battle began, the handlers could not interfere. All she could do was watch and pray. The Ravager attacked again, and this time its claw caught Max across the flank. Even with the armor Emily had made, the impact sent him tumbling across the rocks. He hit a boulder hard enough to crack it. Emily's heart stopped. Max, but the dog was already getting up. He shook himself once, sending dust flying from his coat, and turned back toward the Ravager. Blood was seeping from beneath his armor where the claw had found a gap, but he did not seem to notice. His eyes were focused. His body was ready. The Ravager made a sound that might have been confusion. In all its years of killing, no creature had ever gotten back up that quickly. No creature had ever kept fighting after being hit. Max circled again, staying low, staying fast. He was looking for something. Emily knew what it was. She had seen him do this before, years ago, when a stray dog twice his size had tried to attack them in a park. Max had circled that dog for nearly a minute before making his move. He was looking for a weakness. The Ravager lunged, mandibles snapping. Max ducked under the strike and darted in close. His jaws found the joint between two armor plates on the creature's front leg. He bit down with all the strength his breed was famous for, the strength that had made pit bulls legendary among dog fighters for generations. The Ravager screamed. Max held on. The creature thrashed, lifting him off the ground, slamming him against rocks and dirt. But he did not let go. His jaw muscles were locked, built through thousands of years of selective breeding. Once he bit down, nothing could make him release except his own choice. Across the galaxy, the broadcast commentators had gone silent. No one was speaking. No one could believe what they were seeing. Finally, Max let go. He dropped to the ground and rolled away, taking a chunk of the Ravager's leg joint with him. The creature stumbled, ichor leaking from the wound. For the first time, it looked uncertain. The fight continued. For 2 hours, they battled across the arena. Max used every trick that evolution had given him. He stayed upwind when the Ravager tried to spray its venom. He used the boulders for cover when it charged. He struck and retreated, never giving the creature a clear target, never staying in one place long enough to be caught. The Ravager was bigger. It was stronger. It was designed to be the perfect killer, but Max was smarter. And Max had something the Ravager would never understand. Every few minutes, during brief pauses in the fighting, Max would look back at Emily. Just a quick glance, lasting less than a second. He was checking on her, making sure she was safe, making sure she was still there. And every time, Emily would call out to him, "I am here, Max. I am right here." That was all he needed. That was all he had ever needed. The alien sun moved across the orange sky. Shadows lengthened across the arena. Both creatures were wounded now. Max was limping badly, one of his front legs barely functional. Blood matted his fur in a dozen places. The armor Emily had made was dented and cracked, but the Ravager was worse. Max had bitten it 17 times, always at the joints, always where the armor was weakest. Ichor leaked from wounds all over its body. 2 of its 6 legs were dragging uselessly. Its attacks were slower now, clumsier, driven more by rage than strategy. On the Vec-3 observation platform, Ambassador Threx Prime had stopped speaking. He stood perfectly still, watching the impossible unfold before him. His people had spent 10,000 years breeding the perfect killer, and a small Earth mammal was tearing it apart. The galactic commentators had found their voices again. This is unprecedented. The human creature has sustained massive damage but continues to fight. Analysis indicates that its body should have failed hours ago. Its blood loss alone should be fatal. And yet it keeps fighting. It keeps getting up. Why? Emily knew the answer. She had always known it. Love, simple, unconditional love. Max was not fighting for territory. He was not fighting for food. He was not fighting for survival. He was fighting for her, and he would keep fighting until his heart stopped beating. The Ravager gathered itself for one final charge. It was dying. Max could smell it. But dying creatures were the most dangerous. They had nothing left to lose. Max planted his feet. His body was screaming with pain. His vision was blurring from blood loss. Every breath hurt, but Emily was behind him. And he would never let anything hurt her. "Come on, boy," Emily whispered, tears streaming down her face. "One more time. Just one more time." The Ravager charged. Max charged to meet it. The alien sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of deep red and purple. Long shadows stretched across the arena like dark fingers reaching for the two creatures at its center. The air was cold now, and Emily could see her breath forming small clouds in front of her face. Max was barely standing. His legs shook with every breath. Blood dripped from his muzzle, his sides, his paws. The armor Emily had made for him was destroyed, hanging off his body in broken pieces. One of his eyes was swollen shut. His breathing was rough and wet, the sound of lungs that had taken too much damage. But he was still standing. He was still facing the Ravager. The monster was in even worse condition. It had stopped screaming hours ago. Now it made only a low, constant sound of pain and rage. 5 of its 6 legs were damaged. Its carapace was cracked in a dozen places, leaking the dark ichor that served as its blood. Several of its eyes had gone dark and lifeless, but it was still alive. And it was gathering itself for one final attack. Emily stood frozen near her drop pod. The rules of the trial said she could not help. She could not interfere. All she could do was watch as her best friend, her partner, her family, prepared to die for her. Her hands were shaking. Tears were streaming down her face without stopping. In her mind, she was back in Austin, back in the shelter, looking at a scarred and broken dog that no one else wanted. She remembered the way he had looked at her through the bars of his cage. Not with hope, because he had forgotten what hope was. Just with exhaustion. Just with acceptance of whatever was coming next. She had promised him that night. She had promised him that he would never be alone again. She had promised him that someone would always love him. And now he was going to die on an alien moon. Millions of miles from home, fighting a monster to protect her. The Ravager moved. It was slow now. So much slower than before, but it was still terrifying. 6 tons of dying rage, crawling toward Max with its remaining functional legs. Its jaws opened wide, venom dripping from glands that still worked. It was going to spray him. It was going to cover him in poison and watch him melt. Max did not move. He could not. His body had given everything it had. His legs would not obey him anymore. All he could do was stand there, facing death, and wait. Emily made a decision. She did not think about the rules. She did not think about the consequences. She did not think about anything except the dog who had loved her without condition for 5 years, who had trusted her completely, who had followed her to the stars because he could not bear to be without her. She stepped out of the safe zone, and she whistled. It was not a loud whistle. It was 3 sharp notes, quick and clear, a sound she had made 1,000 times on lazy afternoons in Austin. It was a command she had taught Max years ago, a command that meant only one thing: come home. Max's ears perked up. His head turned slightly, just enough to see Emily walking toward him, walking toward the Ravager, putting herself in danger. Something changed in his eyes. The exhaustion disappeared. The pain disappeared. Everything disappeared except one simple truth that had been bred into his kind for 40,000 years. Protect your human. The Ravager lunged. Max moved. It should have been impossible. His body was broken. His legs could barely hold him up. But in that moment, watching Emily walk toward danger, he found strength that had no explanation. He did not run away from the monster. He ran at it low and fast, sliding under the descending claws like he had done it 100 times before. His jaws found the Ravager's throat. It was the one spot the creature's designers had left unprotected. The carapace was too thick everywhere else, but the throat needed flexibility to move, to breathe, to swallow prey. It was covered only by tough skin, not armor. Max bit down with everything he had left. The Ravager thrashed. It screamed. It sprayed venom wildly, hitting Max's back, his sides, his legs. His fur began to smoke where the poison touched him. The pain must have been unimaginable. He did not let go. His eyes found Emily. She was running toward him now, screaming his name, tears flying from her face. His tail tried to wag, even now, even as his body was being destroyed. Because that was what he was. That was what dogs were. Creatures who wagged their tails at the people they loved. Even at the very end. 20 seconds passed. 30. The Ravager's movements grew weaker. Its screams grew quieter. Its legs stopped moving. Finally, after what felt like forever, the monster collapsed. Max let go and fell beside it. He tried to stand, to walk toward Emily, but his legs would not work anymore. All he could do was lift his head and look at her as she dropped to her knees beside him. "Max," Emily sobbed, gathering his broken body into her arms. "Oh, Max, you did. You did it, boy." Max's tail wagged weakly against the ground. His tongue came out and licked her hand, just once. His eyes were clouding over, but they never left her face. "Good boy," Emily whispered, pressing her forehead against his. "You were such a good boy, Max. The best boy. The very best boy." Behind them, the galactic broadcast was in chaos. Commentators were screaming in a dozen languages. The Vecthory delegation had gone completely silent. Across 17 star systems, billions of beings were watching a human woman hold her dying dog and tell him how much she loved him. "Ambassador," Threx Prime's voice cut through the noise. "What manner of bond is this? What connection exists between these creatures that would drive such sacrifice?" Emily looked up. Her face was wet with tears, but her eyes were fierce. "This is humanity, Ambassador. We do not fight alone. We never have." She looked back down at Max. "And we never abandon our partners." Medical shuttles were descending now. Human and Vecthory both. The trial was over. The rules said the Ravager's death meant humanity had won. But no one was thinking about rules anymore. Emily held Max as the medics surrounded them. She held him as they loaded him onto a stretcher. She held his paw as they rushed in toward the shuttle, toward the surgery that might save his life. "Stay with me, Max," she begged. "Please stay with me. We have so much more to do together. Please." Max's eyes flickered. His tail moved, just slightly. He was trying to wag it. Even now, even at the end, because that was what dogs did for the people they loved. 3 hours later, after 4 surgeries and 2 transfusions of synthetic blood, the human scientists had to invent on the spot, because dog blood did not exist anywhere in the galaxy. Max opened his eyes. Emily was there. Of course she was there. She had not left his side for a single second. "Hey, boy," she whispered. "Welcome back." Max's tail wagged. Slowly at first, then faster and faster, until his whole body was shaking with it. He did not understand what had happened. He did not understand that he had just changed the course of galactic history. He only understood one thing. Emily was here. Emily was happy. Emily loved him. That was all he had ever needed. In the months that followed, the galaxy changed. The Vecthory withdrew all their territorial claims. Other aggressive species suddenly found reasons to negotiate peacefully with humanity. And a new phrase entered the galactic vocabulary, spoken in 100 different languages across 1,000 different worlds. Be careful with the humans. They have partners. Emily Park was promoted to commander. Max was officially commissioned as the first K9 officer in the United Earth Space Force. With full honors and a medal, he immediately tried to eat. But on quiet evenings, when the stars drifted past the observation deck of whatever ship they served on, Emily would sit with Max's head in her lap. She would scratch behind his scarred ears and tell him the same thing she had told him in that arena. "Good boy, Max, the very best boy." And Max's tail would wag, because in the end, that was all he had ever wanted to hear.